My name is Rajat Sadana. I'm one of the co-founders of e-GMAT, and I'm going to be your main host today. With me, I have Weber. Weber is a senior GMAT strategy expert at e-GMAT. He's going to be your co-host today. So the reason why we have two hosts in the webinar is so that we get through the webinar in time. So it's about a 2 hour long webinar, and if you have questions, you can pose those questions, and Weber can address some of those questions. Of course, if they're about what I'm talking about, then I would address those questions as well. My goal in this webinar is to give each one of you a better idea about how to prepare for your GMAT journey. Again, for your GMAT journey being a very specific thing. So it's not, we're going to talk about some generic principles, but we're going to go towards personalization fairly soon. Um, at the end of this webinar, I would feel I'm successful if each one of you understands how does the GMAT work, number one. If I can address certain misconceptions about the GMAT and the right way to prepare, that's one aspect that I'm looking to achieve. The second thing is if I can give each one of you, regardless of whether you're an e-GMAT student or someone who's just using the e-GMAT free trial, a study plan towards your GMAT journey. And then beyond that study plan, if I can impart that wisdom about how do you go about executing that plan, that would be my third goal in this webinar. So overall, about a 2 hour long webinar. We're recording this webinar, and we want to make sure that you guys get the recording as well. Um, okay, you can read the goals over here. More or less are the same thing. In different words. Let me hide this as well. With that, considering that we have about 80 students here in the webinar right now, I want to understand how is it that when do you plan to take the test? I also want to understand a few other things. So I'm going to ask a few other poll questions as well. It's always good to know what scores you're aiming for. So I'm going to put this other poll question. What's your target GMAT score? I'm going to open this poll so you can now put those responses, and I'm going to remove broadcast results so that your responses are not influenced by how others are polling in. Um, all right, let's get a few more responses on target GMAT score, and then I'm going to ask one other poll, which is really interesting, and it corresponds to this is what's your current GMAT score? Again, I'm going to remove broadcast results, reopen this poll, so that you guys can put those answers in as well. And I see there are about 20% of you who've joined using your cell phone. I want to thank you guys for participating, because I know it's a bit more challenging to participate using your cell phone than it is to use while using your computer's browser. All right, let's broadcast results. So in terms of target GMAT scores, you can see about half of you are aiming for that 730, 750 bracket. Again, really good participation. I see about 70 odd. You guys have cast for about 70 odd votes. So another 33% in that 760 plus bracket. So overall, we're looking at about 90% of you, give or take, in that 730 to 730 or higher bracket, and then about, well, to be more precise, about 11% in the 662 to 720 bracket or so. So we're going to really talk about why is it that 730 to 750 is really important. So those are your target scores. Let me hide this poll. In terms of your starting scores, this is where you guys are. You can see again a really good distribution. The biggest group here doesn't know their score. We're going to give you an access to a free mock test that will give you your starting abilities, not just your current score, but what your strengths, what your weaknesses are, and so that's something that we'll do. But again, you can see three big groups: 610 to 650. 560 to 600 and 400 to 500. That's three big groups in there. Then we have about another three small groups with 710, 720. We have one person there. It's good. It's good to have someone who's there and who needs to go from there. We have 660 to 700, and then 510 to 550. We also have a few people in that group as well. Now, when do people plan to take the test? Again, the biggest group hasn't taken a date as of yet. Makes sense given the fact that you don't know the biggest group was also the one that didn't know their starting score. But then beyond that, 46 to 75 days is the next big group, and then 31 to 45 days is the one beyond that. All right, and there are two other poll questions that I want to ask. Let me just get this. So this is a multiple response question. I'm gonna Well, no, this is actually a single response question. What kind of B schools are you aiming for? Let me reopen this poll again. So remove broadcast results again. Are you aiming for an M7 B school? Are you aiming for a top 20 B school in the US, which is outside of the M7? So each of these is mutually exclusive. So first one is M7, the other one is outside of M7. Then you have another third category of USB school, which is a non T20 B school over here. Then you have European B schools, Indian B schools, and those who are undecided are and you have Canadian as well. If someone's aiming for Canadian B school, um, or so, and if not decided, then that's something that's there now. And this is a single response question by choice because I want you to tell me what's your premier choice. What is it that you're truly aiming for? All right, three, two, and one. Let me end the poll. Broadcast the results. And again, I have about 95 students now in the webinar. You can really see about 32% of them are aiming for an M7 school in the US, about 18% for European B schools. The next biggest segment is about 25%, a quarter if you're aiming for Indian B schools. um, T20 schools are a significant percentage as well, and then the remaining over here. So that's good. Thank you very much. The next question is a multiple response one. It's an interesting question. It's a question that usually sets the tone for how I modulate my webinar. This is a multiple response, which means you guys can choose more than one statement. And I want you to select all the statements that you agree with. So you can choose two, three, you can choose just one, you can choose all six as well. Each one of these statements is a yes no statement. So um, so so make sure that whenever you select a statement, you're answering a yes no question independent of the other second statement you read, or the third statement you read, or the fourth statement you read. So each statement is independent. Each statement is a yes no question. If you agree with it, then select it. If you don't agree with it, then don't bother selecting it. Good. Three, two, and one. Let me end the poll. And again, remember, there's no right or wrong answer here. It's about what your beliefs are as of now. And I want to do this at the end once again, and I want to really see how these responses change. Let me end the poll. I'm going to broadcast results. 78% of all of those who polled said, I want a study plan that my study buddy and I can use. That's you want, so which means 78% of you have a study buddy or have someone that you're studying with. I'm going to put in a yes no question in context of the first one. How many of you have a study buddy, someone who's you're preparing with? Select yes if you have a study buddy, select no if you don't. Okay, most of you don't, and I don't know why 78% of you choose this one uh, overall. Okay, uh, let me end the poll. The second one is the first 10 questions are very important. I need to make sure I go slow and get them right. We're going to address this as well. Should you do that? How should you approach those first 10 questions? But 57% of you think you should take a mock every 10 to 15 days. I'll tell you right away, if you're an e-GMATer, don't do that. It's going to do a lot more harm than good. If you're not an e-GMATer, also don't do that. It does way more harm than it does. Unless and until you reach a certain stability, taking mocks doesn't help. Um, Fix your timing issues while learning, otherwise it becomes difficult to ace a time test. Again, 48% of you say this is something that you believe in. Again, I'm going to tell you bad practice. I'm going to prove it to you why that is the case. As a company that has delivered 60% of all 700 plus scores that have been reported on by GMAT Club partners, EG matters focus on learning, and as they focus on learning, a majority of their timing issues get fixed right away. And this is where this is such a fun question. It's not to really say you're right or wrong. It's our goal here is to make sure that you get to that success level. So um so 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 and these are things that people have. I'm gonna prove each one of these to you as we get into the session. It's better to study two topics. We're going to discuss that to really say when is it better to study two topics and when is it not. And 70% of my time should be spent practicing questions. We're going to really see why the correct answer over here is 30% and not 70%. And where should 70% of your time be spent? Again, depends on where you are, depends on who you are. If you're at a 700 level, maybe this is the correct statement. If you're at a 600 level, this is probably not going to be something that you want to do. If you're doing this, you will likely not get to that 750 score. All right. With just thank you for those inputs. I'm going to keep the responses here. And with that, we're going to go right into what I call as the presentation pane here. Now, in this presentation pane, you see three pods. You see the presentation, which is right at the center of this of the screen, or we can say top left center of the screen. So this is where pretty much all the content that I'd be discussing would be there. I'll use the presentation as an aid. I'll annotate on it. The second thing that you will see is a Q&A pod, which is right below the presentation pod. I'm actually moving this Q&A pod right now so you can see that. If you have a question during the webinar, please put those questions in a Q&A pod. That way, as you put your questions in, Webhub can respond to those questions. And so your questions, you get a great answer to your question, and we'll still proceed and make sure we get the webinar done in about 2 hours. And then on the right-hand side, I'm going to move the short answer pod over here, is a place where I ask my questions and you respond to it. We want to make sure we keep this webinar very, very interactive. So we'll ask a bunch of questions during this webinar, and so the best way to get the most out of this webinar is to participate. Okay. Now, in terms of just a very simplistic agenda, I said I had three goals. These are the three goals over there. The first thing is we want to talk about what does a GMAT really test. That's where part one comes in. And I'm going to talk about a GMAT simulation. Some of you may have seen that, others may not. Even if you've seen that, that simulation is something which is so fundamental to your understanding of the GMAT that even if you've seen that, I can tell you about 80% of you don't understand how to draw inferences from it. We're going to focus on doing that. And by drawing inferences, we will talk about the importance of first 10 questions, how should you approach those first 10 questions, and a bunch of other misconceptions around the GMAT. So once we have the fundamentals in place, then we're going to do a case study where we talk about what does a study plan do, how should you build your study plan. We're going to have two people, two e-GMATers who succeeded on the GMAT, and we're going to demonstrate how each their study plan was different and what are the fundamentals on which that study plan was built. And then the third part over here would be would essentially be how do you execute on that once you have that study plan. What metrics do you track? Why should you not be taking mocks, and rather what should you be doing to evaluate your progress doing this? And what happens if you're not progressing? What should you do if you see that you're not meeting those metrics? Because it's important to evaluate yourself at e-GMAT, we evaluate you every 30 minutes. We give you metrics. Most people get metrics every 2 to 3 days as to how well they're doing. And so we're going to really talk about what those metrics are and how should you interpret those metrics. Okay. Is the audio still loud and clear? You guys can type yes or no in the short answer pod. Good. That's wonderful. Again, not in the Q&A pod, but in the short answer pod. Gaurav says, unlike most attendees, I'm looking to do an EA. What's the difference in terms of difficulty levels? So Gaurav, very similar in terms of the syllabus. The EA and the GMATs are really, really similar. It's just that EA has a greater emphasis on IR. But if you're an e-GMAT student, we have a fantastic IR course that's included with every subscription plan. So that's something that would help you. Again, write to the support team; they can help you do that. All right. With that, thank you very much for that wonderful participation. So the fundamentals of the GMAT. One of the first things I want to talk about is when it comes to acing the GMAT. Um, one thing that you should truly focus on is building ability, and the reason why I really talk about this is because a lot of people, while acing the GMAT, focus on a bunch of things such as timing, such as the exam strategy, um, and a bunch of other things, which again are relevant, but are not as important as building ability. So when it comes to acing the GMAT, 80% of your success depends on this, and all of this over here is combined is about 20% overall. And in fact, ability in the context of the GMAT is not an abstract concept. It's something that the GMAT measures. It's a quantitative concept, and we're going to really talk about what that measure for ability is. Okay. Now let's go forward. Now, one of the other things I want to really talk about in the context of ability is this term called accuracy. A lot of us know what accuracy is. When you take a 10-question quiz, you get 8 out of those 10 questions correct. Your accuracy is 80%. Now, accuracy is what I call as an independent metric, which means that 80% is something that tells you you've gotten 8 out of those 10 questions correctly. It doesn't tell you how well you've done compared to others. So if you take that 10-question quiz, if half the people who take a similar quiz get 80% accuracy, then your ability or your ranking in that quiz is about 50th percentile. Not so great when you look at that. Similarly, if you take an 8-question quiz or 10-question quiz, you get 7 out of those 10 questions correct. If each of those questions is hard, your ranking will most likely be 90th percentile, a much better metric or so. Ability is a comparative metric. It looks at that ranking that I just talked about, and it answers that question, how good you are compared to others. Okay. Now, just to really tell you how does the GMAT work, I'm going to do a simulation. This is a simulation where I have two students, case 1 and case 2, or we're going to call them student 1 and student 2. On the x-axis, what I have is the question number over here. On the y-axis, I have the difficulty level of question. So the higher you go on y-axis, the more difficult a question becomes. We're going to start with simulating case 1, or student 1 over here. Student 1 or case 1 gets the first question. First question usually on most tests, and I say the word most tests because there are exceptions to it, is a medium difficulty level, and we're going to simplify all of this. The GMAT works on the same principle. The algorithm is slightly more complex, but the fundamental principles are the same. So gets the first question, gets it right, hence gets a second question, which is slightly more challenging. You can see that because we are going higher on the y-axis. Going higher on the y-axis means that the question is a bit more challenging. Okay, he gets that right as well. As a result, gets the third question, which is a bit more challenging. You can see the third question over here is even further up on y-axis. Y-axis is this axis, by the way. He gets that question wrong. As a result, gets the fourth question. You can see this is the fourth question here, which is between the difficulty level of that question is between that of question 2 and question 3. And how do you see that? If you draw horizontal lines from question 2 and question 3, you can see the fourth question is between that. Gets that question correct, gets the fifth question that is wrong. Okay. So this was student 1. We will only simulate our 5 questions because that helps us illustrate. It's enough to illustrate the principle. Okay. Um, we have a few questions in the Q&A part. If you can address those questions, that'd be great. We're going to look at student 2 or case 2. Student 2 gets the first question, medium difficulty level, gets that wrong. Gets the second question, which is easier. You can see we're going down on the y-axis, which means the difficulty level is going down. Then so he gets that right. Then he gets a third question, which again is slightly more challenging. He gets that wrong. Gets the fourth question, which is slightly easier. Again, you're going down between 3 and 4 on the y-axis. He gets that right. And he gets the fifth question right as well. Now, if I were to ask you between student 1 and student 2, who is doing better, uh, who would you really say? Is it student 1 or is it student 2? Let's get the poll questions in. I have 115 students in the webinar. Let's get at least 80 responses. Who is doing better, student 1 and student 2? Now, the accuracy, for both these students is 3 out of 5 or 60%. I have about 80 responses so far. I'm going to broadcast results. I'm going to end poll. 81% of you say student 1's doing better, but 19% says student 2. I'm going to first ask the group that chose student 2, why do you think student 2 is doing better? And then I'm going to ask the same question to the group that chose student 1. Why do you think student 2 is doing better, the group that said student 2? This is a question for for the group that chose student 1. All right, for the group that chose student 1, why do you think student 1 is doing better? More complex questions, answer most difficult questions correctly. Okay. Consecutive questions as well. All right. So most of you've gotten this right. I'm really happy to see that. The reason why student one, the correct answer is student one's doing better. The reason why student one's doing better is because, uh, if you look at the difficulty level of question that he's answered correctly, he's answered more difficult questions correctly. In fact, when you look at this, student one was, the test served student one's 5 questions. Each one of these questions was either at the average difficulty level, which is, when you think about the first question, or above the average difficulty level. For student two, he only had one question that was served to him at the average difficulty level. Another inference that you can draw from this is student two did not even get the opportunity to answer difficult questions, and the test didn't even serve difficult questions to student two. So, one of the first things that I want to tell you is that if you want to ace the GMAT, most of you were aiming for that score of about 87, 88% of you were aiming for that score of 730 or higher. Tell yourself this, when it comes to that acing the GMAT, you have two challenges that you need to overcome. One is you have to make the test serve difficult questions to you. The second is you have to make sure that you answer them correctly. Now, if you're an e-GMAT student, you probably know this, but if you're not, also I have this question for you. Uh, how many points, when you look at difficult versus easy questions, how many points do you think a difficult question gets? What's the ratio of the number of points that you get for answering a difficult question correctly versus answering an easy question correctly? Okay, 8 to 12. All right. This is difficult versus easy, not difficult versus medium. Yeah, the correct answer is more around that 3 is to 1. When you look at difficult versus easy, or 3 is to 10, or 10 is to 3 is essentially what it should be. But yeah, so the ratio is more or less around 1 is to 3, or 3 is to 1, depending on, yeah. So you guys got this. So just to really tell you how much weight more weight a difficult questions carries. But again, it's not your choice whether you want to do a difficult question correctly or not, because this test first has to serve those difficult questions to you. Now, why is that important? Because the reason why this is important is, and this is something, for those of you who've spent about 50, 60 hours preparing for the GMAT, one of the biggest temptations we get while studying for the GMAT is we study sentence correction for 20 hours, and then we really say, hey, I think I've done enough of sentence correction. Let me go study reading comprehension or number properties. Has that happened with anyone? Has that happened with anyone? You say, I've spent 20 hours doing that. Let me go study something else. It's a very natural thing. Maybe, and your brain's telling you, let's just switch on. Let's get some variety. I want to get into that comfort zone right now. It's at that point you have to tell yourself, one of the first challenges you have is to get those difficult questions served to you. You want the test question picker on the test to serve difficult questions to you, and the only way it will serve difficult questions to you is if you build that ability. There's a reason why 730 is around that 96 percentile, because many people, even though they put in the hours, they don't put in that mental effort to push that urge over, and make sure that they continue studying and building that ability when they are in that zone of building that ability, and you have to overcome that urge. Okay, really important. Anish saying, isn't the approach to get first 10 questions right a myth? Anish, we'll discuss that in about 20-25 minutes or so hold on to that question. We're going to talk about the first 10 questions and how you should approach them. Okay. Can I switch on my camera? I can. It's just that the audio will go bad. I usually, that way, I'm not as comfortable switching on the camera, because some people usually have an issue with the camera. Okay. But if you guys truly want to see me, this is where I am. But usually it definitely has issues with it. Okay. So I'm going to hide this for now. I'm going to turn this off. And then towards the end, I'd be happy to switch it on when I know that I'm not sharing the presentation. The audio doesn't need to be that real time. All right. Can you tell me why it's wrong to switch topics for change? Or okay, so Think about the time when you learn something. Okay, how many hours per day do you guys have to study? Let me ask this question. Most of you are working professionals. How many hours per day during a working day can you devote? I can tell you most working professionals struggle to put in more than a good 2.5 hours. I have taught upwards of 100,000 students on the e-GMAT platform. I've interacted with close to 3,000 of them, and that's a pretty significant sample. And I can tell you, when it comes to high quality study time, 2.5 hours. If I get 2 hours, I'm really happy from a student. Okay, a lot of people say 3 to 4 hours. When it comes to consistently putting 4 hours, very few of them. If you're a working professional, if you're not working, then yes. Okay. Now, when you have 2 hours, and this is something that we put in over there as a metric when we give a recommendation. If you have 4 hours, you can study two sections, not a problem. But most people have 2 hours there. And think about the process of learning in two high quality hours. To learn any new concept, to let's say you want to learn verb ing modifiers in the context of modifiers, you need about an hour and a half of learning. Then during you need dedicated evaluation on that, and then you need to review the mistakes. All of that takes about an hour and 45. You try doing two things over there. You have to compress that learning period to about 30-35 minutes. You have to compress that evaluation period to about 20 minutes, and then that review time isn't there. And then that review time isn't there, forget about your ability to reach that 90th percentile. Again, you're not trying to learn something that you'd see on the test that's exactly similar to what you've learned. You're trying to learn an application. You're trying to learn how to apply things. And that's where you need to achieve that deeper level of understanding. That's where you need that dedicated time. In fact, I can tell you, for most working professionals who've put in about 60 hours, they will tell you that that essentially it's difficult to consistently put in more than 2 hours. For folks who put in 60 hours or more consistently, which means 6 out of 7 days you're studying, it's very difficult to do it. On one day you may be able to do, you may think you'd be able to do it, uh, but most people cannot put in more than 2 hours. 2 hours is a really great amount of time. Okay. And I can say this with confidence because, as I say, we deliver 60% of all 700 plus scores delivered on GMAT Club. Um, the voice at my end, is the voice loud and clear? Because I can see the voice at my end is pretty good. I don't see any alerts. Okay. Yes. One of the other things that I want to just tell you over here is, let me ask this other poll question. What kind of internet connection do you guys have? Do you have a regular internet where you have a cable coming to your house and you're distributing internet from there? Are you using a mobile hotspot or your cell phone's internet, or are you using satellite? So your mobile hotspot or cellular broadband, they're fundamentally the same technology, just different devices. Other is essentially something like a SpaceX or stuff, basically a satellite internet. If you have a cable coming to the house and you're distributing internet from there, that's the best way to join the session. As I said, this isn't a YouTube session. This is real time audio. This is how we are able to do these polls in real time, and you can see the results in real time. um, and so you shouldn't probably have any problem with this. But if you're using a mobile hotspot, all cellular broadband, as someone who designed these technologies in my previous life, I can tell you a mobile hotspot is not designed to provide continuous real-time audio for more than 20 minutes. It's just the technology is not there. Just the way the network's managed doesn't work that way. So for you, the audio will lag in 20 to 30 minutes. Just join again, and the problem, once the connection resets, the audio comes back. um, Again, this is real-time audio. This is bi-directional communication, not a YouTube video which can buffer in advance. Okay. All right. How many hours do non-working people study? So non-working students, I don't recommend people who can study full-time to put in more than 5 hours a day. It's just, again, remember, you need that headroom to process whatever you've studied. If you study more than 5 hours a day, it's not productive. It tends to be, the law of diminishing returns tends to come in. Okay. You need that headroom to process what you've learned. One of the other things, how many of you've heard this thing that the GMAT algorithm is a very complex algorithm, and it's very sophisticated. It's very difficult to understand that algorithm. How many of you have heard that? Okay. What I want to tell you, as someone who's, as I said, in the former world, I designed cellular systems. I was an algorithm designer actually, and one thing that I'll tell you is the GMAT algorithm is not very sophisticated. In fact, it's designed to work like a human, and as someone who's done algorithms, it's actually, in my opinion, and this is my opinion as a former algorithm designer, it's not state of art. Doesn't mean it's bad, just to be very clear, but when it comes to something that's designed to estimate ability, there are way better algorithms that are available today. But just to really tell you how does the algorithm work and why is it that it works like a human, how many of you have hired an individual, hired someone to work for you? Okay. If you've hired someone to work for you, then you know how the GMAT works, because the GMAT works exactly the same way. Okay. So let's say in an organization, you have these five positions there. You have the lowest level is an analyst, then you have a manager, then you have a director, then you have a vice president, and then you have an EVP, which is executive vice president. And you have to, place this guy over here, and excuse my drawing. You have to place this guy with this strange nose and this mouth in one of these positions. Okay. Now, essentially, let's say you ask EVP level questions. You ask one EVP level question to this guy, and this person answers it incorrectly. Would you hold that against him? Would you hold that against him? No, absolutely not. It's a super hard question. An EVP level question is supposed to be a super hard question. That guy might as well be still be valid for an EVP level position, or definitely a VP level position. That's equivalent to the GMAT asking you a hard question up front. If the first question is a hard question, you get it wrong, doesn't matter, because it can be a hard question. Now, if I ask you two director level questions, or three director level questions, and you answer all of them wrong, what's your next? What would be your next move if you have to hire someone? I've asked you three questions which are director level. You've gotten all of them wrong. What would you do next? You want to ask the manager level questions. Your thought process would be that maybe this guy is a manager level or an analyst level. Yes, you might ask them an analyst level question as well to really say, let's kind of start with the base over here. That's exactly how the GMAT works. Okay. Essentially, if you have this model in your mind, and if you want to really understand how the GMAT works, or how should you study, how should you behave in the test, if you have this model, it will give you every answer that you need. This model is kind of what I call as the equivalent of Newton laws of physics. If you know those physics, you can pretty much build anything in the world when it comes to mechanical systems. Now, if you're someone who is aiming for that 730 or so score, what position are you aiming for? If you're aiming for that 730, 740, 750, what position are you aiming for? EVP, yes. Always remember that. Okay. You likely are not at that EVP level today, but you're aiming for that position. And depending on your starting level, you have to get to that EVP level. Okay. VP or higher, yes. Okay. Again, the takeaway that I want to make sure that you get over here is, when it comes to taking the test, your scores governed by your ability to answer difficult questions correctly. That's the key piece over there. Now, does it mean you should solve difficult questions starting today? No. But again, that's the end point you want to get to. We're going to see how we want to build to that. Okay. Now, whatever I've talked about so far has been more at the anecdotal level. Let's kind of share some data over here. And the data that I'm sharing is GMAT prep attempts, or official GMAT mock attempts. We used to call it GMAT prep because when I gave the test, the software was called GMAT prep. What you call now is official GMAT mocks, and these are attempts of two students in the pre 2018 era. So this is, I think, January 2018 is where this data is from. And in the pre 2018 era, the verbal section was 41 questions, which is why you see 41 question numbers 31 to 41. Now, the beauty of the GMAT prep software, and if you can still get it, get it from somewhere, um, it'll tell you everything that you need to know about the GMAT. So the beauty of that software was it provided immense amount of insights when it came to how the GMAT worked. And a lot of our understanding comes from that. Uh, and essentially, you see GMAT attempts of two different students here. Student one, which is on the left hand side, got the first 10 questions correct, got the 11th and 12th question correct. He made 9 mistakes on the test. But student two made 11 mistakes on the test. Now, if you look at question numbers 11 to 41, these students, it's very difficult to distinguish between them. Okay. Now, when you look at their scores, they're very different. Student one got a V43. Student two got a V32. V43 on the GMAT, and by the way, today V43 doesn't exist. In the past, it did exist when this was taken. Was 97th percentile. V42 right now is 96th percentile. V32, on the other hand, is about 65th percentile, which means given that about 200,000 people take the GMAT, what the test told this guy is, hey, there are 70,000 people who are at the same level or brighter than you. What the test told this guy is that uh, there are about 6,000 only 6,000 students who are at the same level or better than you. Okay, I usually put this data, and there's a reason why I put this data. I want to ask this question: when you look at this data, what is your opinion of the GMAT? Is it harsh? And this was a yes/no question here. I want you to tell me: is the GMAT harsh? All right, let's get a few more responses. I have 116 students here in the webinar. Is the GMAT harsh? I have 42 responses, 43. I want you to put in your responses, and then I'm going to broadcast results. Let's get at least 80 responses. I have 60, almost 60 responses so far. All right, 65. Is the GMAT harsh? 67. Let's get 70. 69. One more person should put in their poll. Is it harsh? 3, 2, and 1. Let me end the poll. We have 70 responses exactly. 54% of you said the GMAT's harsh, and 46% say the GMAT's not harsh. Okay. One of the things that you have to recognize is the GMAT's a really fair test. Remember, I said accuracy is not a really good measure on the GMAT. This is what this is designed to demonstrate. When it comes to the GMAT, um, it doesn't care as much about your accuracy as you think. The GMAT's actually a very fair test, probably the best designed test, which is why the SAT, the GRE have morphed themselves more and more along the lines of the GMAT. Um, and so one of the ways to really look at this is, this guy got a 97th percentile despite answering a quarter of the questions, almost a quarter of the questions incorrectly. Clearly, it's not a harsh test. Okay. Those of you who are thinking, if I make two more mistakes, I'm going to drop down by about 64,000 people. That's not how the GMAT works. Okay, so the takeaway that I want you to have is the GMAT's not a harsh test. But then one question that you guys would have is, okay, if I can't look at accuracy, how the hell do I evaluate whether I'm doing well? And how does the GMAT give me that 6,000 rank or 96th percentile versus uh, versus that 60, 70th percentile or so? And the answer to that is that difficulty level of questions. These students weren't served questions of similar difficulty level. Okay, so how is the test scored then? It's scored on that notion of ability. That V43 student or that 97 percentile student internally had these ability scores. This guy, this test rated him among the top 5 percentile of students when it came to sentence correction and critical reasoning, and amongst the top 13% of students when it came to reading comprehension. These three ability scores caused his or resulted in his V43 score. But the guy who got a V32, which is a 65th percentile rank, had, and you can really see those ability scores, they are very different. Top 19 percentile of students when it comes to SC, but there are so many more students who are better than this guy in CR and RC. When you look at this guy through the lens of ability, can you really see that these two students look very, very different? Can you see that? Okay. So when I said building your ability is not an abstract notion on the GMAT. It's a very specific notion. It's a very quantitative notion. That's what I meant. And internally, when you actually attempt either the quant or the verbal section, this is how the GMAT looks at you. It evaluates your ability in SCCR and RC, and then it gives you a verbal score, and it evaluates your ability in arithmetic and algebra geometry, and it then gives you that quant score. Okay. So, Shubhi says, are all sections equally important? I've heard that RC holds a very high relevance. In about 3 minutes, I'm going to answer that question. Okay. Um, mm, all right. So, GMAT score is composed of 5 subsectional scores. Well, on quant, you have algebra and geometry and arithmetic. And on the verbal, you have SCCR and RCR. So, tense correction, critical reasoning, and reading comprehension. Okay. Each subsection is independent. We actually simulated about 2000 ESRs or enhanced score reports. You can see all these numbers in an ESR or enhanced score report. And what we found was that both arithmetic and algebra geometry were independent. Similarly, on the verbal side, everything was independent. In fact, how many of you have done a regression or understand what a regression is? How many of you understand what regression is? Okay. Regression simply says, when you're comparing inputs and outputs, and you have a set of inputs and you have an output when you have data around it. Regression simply says how much of the output can be explained by inputs. Okay, so what we did was we had these 2000 score reports, ESRs or enhanced score reports. We really did a regression algorithm where we said how much of the verbal score can be predicted using SCCR and RC. And when you do that, there is something called an R square that you get. The R square that we got for both verbal and quant was 99.5%. For those of you who know what regression is, how good is that R square? How good is 99.5% R square? It's the best. It's just as good as it can get. That regression equation or that plot where we had a regression output and we had the actual scores. We plotted what we call as a standard error of regression. On the scale of 800, that standard error was just 7.8 points. Okay, 7.8 points. Um, and furthermore, the coefficients of SCCR and RC had equal weights there. So each section is independent, each section has equal weights. So RC is not way more important than SC or CR. Even though CR has the fewest questions, it just is that the GMAC needs 9 questions to evaluate your CR ability effectively, and it needs more questions to evaluate your RC ability. Okay. One of the other things which is there is if you're aiming for that V40, there are about 15 ways to get to that V40. And you need a target ability. So depending on what your strengths and weaknesses are, and we're going to see that in the study plan section, there is an optimal way for each one of you to get to a V40 or a Q48 or a Q50. Okay. Because there are multiple ways to get there. Okay. Um, how many of you have seen e-GMATs or have attempted questions on our free trial? If you haven't, go to the e-GMAT free trial. If you have, then on the right hand pane you will see there is this square image which talks about GMAT study plan. If you click on that, it'll take you a page. You'll see about a 9-minute long video where we'll talk about these various ways to get to it. So it's an excellent simulation. Probably those 9 to 10 minutes will be spent really well. Log into the e-GMAT free trial. Click on that. It's on the right hand pane over there. You will see that, and you'll see the value of why you need a target ability in each subsection. Now, these are 3 things, but the other pieces which are there is that the process of building ability in each subsection, that doesn't change. If you're a 30th percentile in SC or 30th percentile in arithmetic, the sequence of steps that you would go through remains the same. You may be studying different content, of course, there are different subsections, but the process of building ability, the steps that you do remain the same. And each one of you has different strengths and different weaknesses. In fact, at e-GMAT, what we do is we divide your starting scores in terms of a scale of percentile in about 4 four groups. So you're either below 30th percentile, between 30th and 50th, between 50th and 70th, and above 70th percentile, um, in each of these subsections. And there are five subsections. So essentially, you have 20 points. And if you look at the sheer number of combinations that each one of you can get in when it comes to between 20 points, it's just a lot, which is why each one of you needs a personalized study plan or so. Okay. But then one of the fundamental questions is when you people say, okay, I'm aiming for that 720, that 740, 760. The question that you need to really answer is, what are the ability scores that will get me to that 730, 740, 750? Okay. Is there a subsection preliminary test that you can take on e-GMAT? We have a Sigma X mock test that gives you these ability scores, those starting ability scores, and so I'm going to share the link to that mock test fairly soon. Or Weber, if you want, if you can share that link to Sigma X mock, that'd be great as well. Okay. Would we also help with the AWA? You know, if you need, we will, but 99.9% of the people don't need it. People who go through our CR and RC courses, they just I mean, they typically need about 4 hours with the standard template for AWA. So, but if you need help, we definitely will help you. I can tell you, you will not, given my experience of students. Okay. Now, the GMAT's a forgiving test. You can make mistakes. Here's one of our students who went from a V17 to a V40. So, two things over here. One is you can see how his V40 is composed of these abilities. Again, this is not something that I've made up. This you get your enhanced score report. You can download this ESR. You can see his ability scores over here. Okay. V40 is 91st percentile, and you don't need to score 90th percentile in every subsection to get to 91st percentile. Let me actually share the link for for you to download this. This guy is number 2 over here, where it says Axel download ESR. If you want to click, you want to download his ESR, you can download that. Okay. All right. Now, the other piece that I want to show is, as you download his ESR, you're going to really see how he approached the test. Now, the first set of questions, he got medium difficulty questions and slightly medium hard, and he got pretty much all of these questions correct, answered all of these questions correctly. The next set, the questions were harder. He made a few more mistakes. But in the last two blocks, which is when the test gave him medium hard to hard questions, he got half the questions wrong. Yet he was able to get to a V40. Again, as I said, the GMAT's a forgiving test as long as you make mistakes on a hard question. This is what I call as a build, maintain strategy, where you're building it, you're proving to the test that you're worthy of being served hard questions. You have really high accuracy on medium and medium hard, and that's when it serves you hard questions and you can maintain that. Okay. Again, build that ability to answer hard questions, then you'll get a high score. All right. So let me hide this. This is an interesting piece. I'm going to remove broadcast results here, and there are 3 questions here. I want you to answer these questions as why means yes, yes, yes. Why means yes, no, yes. And n means n, no, 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 no. 3 questions. I want each one of you to put in your answers. So you can type these three letters, and I want to see what is it that you think about these questions. All right, let's get a few more responses before I broadcast results. Okay. Again, I know you can't see your responses, but I have them. The system archives them. 3, 2, and 1. All right. You can see how people have polled. Why and why. Why and n. And thank you for those who just elaborately put those in. Didn't need to, but yeah, I appreciate, truly appreciate the effort. N. All right. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. All right. So here's how I would do. Do the first 10 questions matter? Yes, they do. Does that mean that you should approach them differently? No. And should you spend more time? Absolutely not. So my answer is YN. And I'm going to really talk about why this is the case. I'm not just going to give you this answer. I'm going to justify my response to this. So Okay. And a lot of this, when people really who say yes, you should approach them differently. So people have said why, or why and why. In your mind, if you're thinking that you are what I call as you're translating a correlation into a causality. Yes, most people who do well on the GMAT do well on the first 10 questions, but they don't do well on the GMAT because they did well on the first 10 questions. One of the things that I want you to remember is you win or lose the battle called the GMAT um, uh, 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 during your preparation phase. The exam is merely an expression of your preparation. And I want you guys to remember this because I've seen a few students who prepare really well, but then they try and do something clever on the test and they mess up. They try and approach the test slightly differently, hoping to gain those additional 20 points, and they end up losing 80 points. Has this happened with anyone over here? You've approached the test differently from how you would approach the mock and you've messed up. Okay. So don't do that. Remember this: the test is merely an expression of your preparation. Okay. So 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 don't ever do that. Let's come back to that notion of first 10 questions, right? So here's who a 90th percentile student is, and this is where I say you win or lose that 720 score during your preparation, not during the test. Okay. A 90th percentile student by definition is this person. A 90th percentile student, if you say you're 90th percentile in SC, what it means is you can answer medium difficulty questions with 90% accuracy, which means you're not going to get a whole lot of medium difficulty questions correctly. So this is the cause over here, this is the result. Remember, medium hard, you'd still make 2 out of 10 mistakes. When it comes to hard, you'll make 3 or 4 out of 10 mistakes. This is a 90th percentile student overall. All right. Now, if this is who a 90th percentile student is, and if the test throws medium difficulty questions at you, are you likely to make a mistake on those questions? Given this data point? No, you're not. So if you go through your natural process, you're not going to make a whole lot of mistakes. You can make one mistake, but you're still going to get the other 9 questions right, which is more than enough to prove to the test that you are very comfortable with medium difficulty questions. You deserve higher difficulty questions. Okay. Um, on the other hand, what happens when you start giving special treatment to a certain question and you say, hey, the first 10 are more important? This statistic, even though you're building up to your ability, this is what your statistics are. These numbers go out of the window. How many of you have attempted a question, gotten it correctly, and then um, said to yourself, let me be extra careful, let me double check my answer, which kind of in other words translates to changing your process, and have marked that question incorrectly? You may have marked it correctly the first time, but then you do double check, go back and mark it incorrectly. That's when you mess up your ability. Okay. So yes, the first 10 are important. Doesn't mean you should do anything any different. Doesn't mean you should spend more time. You build your ability before the exam. You win or lose the test before the exam. The exam is a mere expression of your ability. Okay. That's really important to know. Everyone make mistakes. Magdalena, who scored a 780, she made mistakes. This guy, this Magdalena, I think, scored a V47, V48. Pratik scored a V47. He's now studying at Booth. He made mistakes on the test. It's just that they'll they they approach the test how they would approach a mock test, and this allowed them to express their ability in the best possible light. And you can watch their journeys on our YouTube channel. It's the world's largest collection of success stories. Okay. So takeaways for you is you've got to focus on building that ability. You've got to get to that point where you hit that consistency level, where you achieve that 90th percentile ability, and then on the test approach those questions the same way. Okay. Again, remember, each subsection is important. Each subsection has an equal weight. Let's kind of talk about this piece here. How do you decide your target ability? Anish has a great question. He says, when you say approach the GMAT like a mock exam, do you mean no pressure or special treatment for the main exam? Absolutely. That's exactly what I mean. The moment, I mean, how many of you are, when you take the main test, put additional pressure on yourself? Okay. Here's something that I'll do. I'll tell you, okay? Each one of you is going, but 90% of you are going for a top MBA, which means post graduating, you'd be making decisions, you'd be making investment decisions where you'd have a say in investing 10 to 20 million dollars within 3 years of graduating. All right, within 3 years of graduating. This is a $275 exam. Think about that big picture. And it's a test. It's a test you can take again if you need to. In the context of what you aim to do, how big or small is this? When you look at that from that standpoint, should you be I mean, should you be worried? I mean, should you pressurize yourself? Probably not. I mean, it's just a test, guys. This is not rocket science. Okay, the moment you give this test more importance than you should, that's when you start underperforming. The moment you really say it's a test, I'm someone who I think is capable of doing it, I'm going to approach methodically, I'm going to prepare methodically, I'm going to go through the right process of preparation, and then I'm going to express myself. That's all that you need. Okay, don't give the test more importance than than it deserves. Spend time on it. I'm not saying don't spend time on it, but don't put undue pressure on your head, saying that, oh my god, this is the final exam, I've got to be really really careful. No, that that attitude of being careful should have come during mocks. Okay. And you won't see very many people who run test prep companies say this. Why? Because they want you to buy your courses. I'm saying this because in the end, I want you to succeed. And you can do the best preparation in the world. If you just put undue pressure on your head, you're not going to be able to express yourself. You're not going to succeed. 90% of students who actually hit our internal metrics actually end up acing the test. The other 10% put undue pressure on their head. They end up acing the test 3 weeks down the line. Okay. But don't put undue pressure on your head. And if you go look at our review section, you will see some examples of those students who had the right metrics internally on our platform, failed initially, then came back to us, went through that psychological evaluation, and we had to put an extra effort to make sure that they take the test the way they take mocks, and then they succeeded. Again, it's not a problem that can't be fixed. It's just that, why make that a problem? Why not just focus on building ability? Yep. Does that make sense? Can we kind of all agree to kind of take this test as a test, and then move forward with this? Okay. Now let's talk about study plan. I have a bunch of questions. People are recommending, hey, is this a good study plan for me? Is this a bad study plan for me? I'm going to talk about that. Bene says, what about AW and IR? Are they still relevant even though they don't affect your GMAT score? That's a great question. I'm going to answer that question here. So, are they relevant? Absolutely. Let me be very clear. And in the world of Chat GPT, how many of you have just a yes no question? How many of you have used Chat GPT? Have actually gone on, put in the interface, put in a problem statement, and really asked Chat GPT to respond? Okay. If you haven't used Chat GPT, for those of you who don't know what Chat GPT is, it's essentially an AI driven, you could call it a chatting program. I would say it's an answer generator is what I would call it, where you ask it to do write an essay on X, Y, and Z. If you ask it to write an email, it'll do a great job doing that. If you haven't tried it, you try this. Now, why is that relevant to your GMAT preparation and that AW and IR question? Because having tried ChatGPT over the last 1 month about 10 times, I can tell you it's getting so good that when it comes to writing essays, most essays would the quality of those your application essays would go up, just given the quality of writing that ChatGPT gives. And what does that mean for your AWA? Your AWA is the only piece of written text that the admission committee will have, which where you can't use a tool to help you write one, to write a piece of text. So that's where they'll compare your essays with what you've written during AWA. So AWA is important that way. IR, it doesn't play a role if you have a score of 6 or higher, but frankly, if you don't have a score of 6 or higher, people start to worry. You don't want that worry. Okay. So my hypothesis is that what we'll see big changes in the in as the new application requirements come in. You'll see a lot more video essays, just given what we've seen with ChatGPT. Okay. How to access it? Just Google ChatGPT. Okay. So all right. So then let's talk about study plan. What does a study plan do? Can you guys tell me? What's the job of a study plan? It gives you direction. Good. What else? What's the job of a study plan? Flow of study, reduce anxiety. Okay. Discipline, definitely. Gives you focus. Tells you how long you would need. Perfect. Flow, which means what should you do first? What should you do next? Okay. It'll suggest study plan. Perfect. Really great answers. Okay. So, what does a study plan do? It answers at in the e-GMAT world, a study plan is supposed to answer 3 questions. For each one of you, it'll give you a pathway of how will you reach your target GMAT score, which means it'll tell you what your starting abilities are, it'll tell you what your target abilities are, and what does it mean by that target ability in SC, in CR, in arithmetic, and algebra, in RC, or so. Okay. The second thing that a study plan does is it tells you how long do you need to put in to get to your target score, which means how long do you need to study in SC, given your given your target ability. How long do you study need to study in number properties? How long do you need to study in essentially arithmetic or word problems or so? And then the third and the most important question that it really answers is, let's say I have to study 30 hours in sentence correction. Out of those 30 hours, how much time should I be studying learning content? What metric should I be hitting while learning content? And how much time should I be studying to purely practice questions or so? Remember, I asked this question: how many of you believe this statement? 70% of my time should be spent practicing questions, and I said that, but many of you said that, and I said that may not be the correct answer for most of you, given your starting scores. Okay. So it answers this question as well in the GMAT world. And we'll see how it answers these questions by looking at a case study. Okay. So let me clear all answers over here. So we're going to take a case study. We're going to look at 2 students here, Ayush and Rafaela. Both of them e-GMATs, both of them successful, both of them very different students with different starting scores. And we're going to see how their study plans are different. Okay. Um, At e-GMAT, we build this thing called personalized study planner that takes into account your starting abilities and builds that study plan in about 2 minutes. It actually looks at a database of about, as I said, the same 2000 odd ESRs to really figure out the best way. It has a neural network, and there it figures out the best way to uh, to get to your target score, the least friction way, or the highest probability way is what we call it. Okay. So Rafaela had a starting score of Q36, B36, and she ended up with a Q48 and a V41. So, how did she get her starting abilities? How did she get her starting score? She took the Sigma X mock, the first Sigma mock. Okay, and these were her starting abilities. That score of 600 was composed of these abilities. Remember, an ability score is out of 100. What are your observations when you see these ability scores? What are your observations? What are her strengths? What are her weaknesses? What can you tell me? Okay, we can quant. What else? SC and CR are strengths, right? Really good in SC and CR, 89th, 92nd percentile. RC is a weakness, yes. Okay. It's really important to see this. That just saying that I have a score of 600 is one thing, saying that I have these ability scores is a completely different thing. So, this is a weakness, okay? And this definitely is a weakness. This is a strength, this is a strength, and this is a good starting point. That's how you should look at this. 49 percentile starting ability without a whole lot of preparation is really good. Okay. So we put that data into the personalized study planner, and these are the target abilities that the personalized study planner says that this is your target ability. The first thing that you would really notice is that SC and CR remain more or less the same. Um, we programmed this planner to really not push the abilities beyond 90th percentile unless you already have those. Why? Because you don't want to target an ability beyond 90th percentile, because you go into that zone where one mistake here or there could have an impact on that ability score. So 90th percentile is a safe zone. If you build greater ability, people achieve 97, 90th percentile, that's a bonus. But we don't want to plan our build our plan based on that. So what the test recognized was that verbal is a strength, so which means it should be fairly easy for her to get to a V41, V42 or so. Okay. And so she, to get to a V41, V42, V42 is 96 percentile. It said, okay, given her starting abilities in SC and CR, how much does she need to build in RC? And this is where the answer came in. On the arithmetic and algebra side, she was at a 49 percentile. And so it said, given the fact that she wants to get a 730, 740, she pretty much got a full ride to Harvard. Um, uh, she only needs to get to a Q48. Why? Because you need that Q47 beyond Harvard to study at Harvard. So let's kind of push the algebra geometry to an 80th percentile, and then let's see how much we need to improve our arithmetic score. Now, it's really important to be strategic about these decisions. Why? Because when you look at that 57th percentile, does Rafaela need to worry about answering the most challenging questions in arithmetic, given that this is a target ability? No. And knowing this right on the first day, especially when arithmetic is your biggest weakness, when your starting score in arithmetic is 15 percentile, that's really, really good. Okay. That's really good, because you can then focus your and channelize your energy over there. Okay. Those of you who've been asking for how to take a Sigma X mock, you can take one over here. Also, we have the algebra webinar tomorrow. You can click on that and register for that if inequalities or absolute value are an area of concern for you. Okay. So that's why it's super strategic. It's important to be very strategic about these decisions over here. Now, by taking these starting and ending abilities, the PSP, the personalized study plan, generates the time estimates for how long would she need to study over here. These are the time estimates that you see over here. So I know you can't read this, but once you get the PDF, be able to see, to go from 39th to 85th percentile, Rafaela needed about 2.4 weeks of dedicated effort, where she would put in about, I think it was for her, about 22 hours a week of effort. So that's the effort that she needed in RC. Similarly, about 2 weeks each in arithmetic and algebra geometry or so. Okay. Now, the other thing that this also does is it tells you which stage of learning should you start from, and I'm going to give you a mini tutorial on what we call as the three stages of learning in e-GMAT. Okay, in e-GMAT we have, when you think about building ability, you go through three stages of learning. The first stage is learn concepts and application, which is where, if you've heard of the e-GMAT SC, e-GMAT CR, e-GMAT Quant courses, that's where the concepts and application come in. Okay. The second piece is, once you've learned all the concepts, once you've learned how to apply the concepts, you go into what we call as a master applications stage. Um, this is where you go in scholarly name. If you're e-GMAT students, what do we call this master application stage? We have a formal name for it. Cementing, yes. You There's a special qualifying process, and that you go through to really say you've truly mastered application. Okay. Now, how many of you have experienced this? You study a subsection, let's say SC or number properties. You're doing well when you're studying it, but then as you move from SC to CR, you forget SC. How many of you have seen that? Okay. When you go through cementing, that doesn't happen. So that's why whenever you're studying a subsection in within e-GMAT, we want to make sure you actually finish cementing before you move on to the next subsection, because it ensures that you retain 80 to 90% of whatever you've learned. Okay. And in the cementing stage, there are very specific metrics, there are very specific cementing quizzes that you need to go through. There's a process that you need to go through to make sure that you've cemented. Okay. And then towards the end, you have to refine to perfection, which is where the test readiness stage comes in. Okay. Now, what ability levels do you achieve? When you learn concepts and application, you achieve up to 55th percentile ability. That's a bare minimum if you've done a good job over there. If you once you master application, the bare minimum ability that you achieve is that 70th percentile. So you go from 56th to 70th percentile. You could go to 80th to 90th as well, but 70th is the bare minimum threshold, which really qualifies successful cementing. Okay. And then in refining to perfection, you go from that 71st to 90th percentile. The fundamental thing that I want to tell you is you do different activities at different stages. Most people, someone who's starting at a 30th percentile, would spend 70% of their time here. Okay, even though to get to the 55th percentile, they would then spend, if you're aiming for that 90th percentile, they would then spend 20% of their time here and the last 10% of their time here. And this is something which is really important, because if you have the right foundation, which is what you build over here, going to from that 70th to that 90th percentile with analytics does not take a whole lot of time. Okay. Now, it tells you what you should study. Remember, the third job of a study plan was what should you study, what should you not study. So we have a legend over here where, let me just make sure I have the right color here. This means that you need not study, you have the innate ability. This means this is where you need to put in effort. This is where you're not required to study anything. Okay. Tick means you have the innate ability. Now for Rafaela, you can see how this translates over here. In SC and CR, she had the innate ability, so she didn't need to go through the cementing stage uh, or even the learning concepts and applications. She didn't do the FCCR course. Okay, she focused on practicing questions in Scholaranium. All right, but when it came to RC, she had to do everything. She also had to focus on maintaining that. When it came to arithmetic and algebra, she had to do everything. Now remember, there's no refined to perfection here. Why? Because we are not aiming for uh, for that 83rd percentile, but here there's a refined to perfection. How many of you have experienced this level of personalization when it comes to your study plan? Okay, you guys deserve this level of personalization. This is really important. Okay, Ayush had a slightly different journey. He came to us with scores, with very, very different scores, as you can see. Uh, he came to us, his starting score was 670, his end score was 750. Okay. Again, how did he get that 670? Using that Sigma X mark. These were her starting abilities. Your observations over here. What are your observations? What are his strengths? What are his weaknesses? SC and CR are his weaknesses. This is what he needs to fix. Now, he came, if you watch his interview, what you would really see is that he attempted the GMAT twice before he came to e-GMAT. And in the first two attempts, he knew about e-GMAT. He said, okay, I've got so many prep resources. What difference would it make? Okay. These are the target scores. So we added this to PSP. These are the target scores that we caught for Ayush. And you can really see, the improvement is in SC and CR. Okay, that's where the improvement is. Of course, his RC is also pushed up, but then it's SC and CR. Okay, the time estimates are very, very different for him. Uh, Again, let's go back. These were the focus areas for him. Okay. Arithmetic algebra, he did not need to do anything. He was already there. So all he needed to do was maintain. RC, he needed to master application. He needed to refine to perfection because, wanted him to get to the 93rd percentile. SC and CR is where he started from. Even though he had studied a bunch of books, he said, you've got to start from the basics. You've got to start from right from learning what we call as the master comprehension course, and then go from there. Okay. So both of them, Rafaela went to a 730, this guy went to a 750, but their study plans were very different. Their focus areas were very different. Where they spent time was very, very different. Where they went to schools was very different as well. This guy went to Columbia. He got a scholarship from Columbia. She went to Harvard. She got a full ride from Harvard. Okay. Now, Ayush spent but 2.7 weeks of full-time effort. When I say full-time, about 22 hours a week on sentence correction. Rafaela probably spent about 6 hours on sentence correction. Similarly, Ayush spent about 37, 38 hours on critical reasoning. Rafaela about 6 hours again. When it came to RC, Rafaela spent about 2.5 weeks. Ayush spent only 1.1 weeks. So about 26, 27 hours. Rafaela spent about 40 to 50 hours on RC. And Quant, you can really see Ayush hardly spent any time. Rafaela spent 2 weeks of dedicated effort each on RC. Now, again, similar end scores. Um, in fact, even if they had identical starting scores, their internal abilities could be so different that they would need different study plans or so. Again, in arithmetic and algebra, Rafael had to start from basics. Ayush didn't have to study anything. In RC, Ayush had to do cementing and do refine to perfection. And when it comes to SC and CR, Ayush had to pretty much do everything. Okay. Now, we want each one of you to experience this level of personalization. So, if you're an e-GMAT student, you actually have done this. You have built your study plan. You have access to our level 2 strategy experts. If you're not an e-GMAT student, we do open up about 20 slots. If you want to really work with one of the strategy experts to to build your study plan, you can work with one of the strategy experts to build your study plan. Okay, you can click on get your study plan over here. Now, given um, given that we generate so much success, we also do some research when it comes to what's the value of that 730 score. Yes, you guys really see that 730 score as a median score at top business schools, but then there are people, and then you would have heard people say, you don't need a 730 740 to get into a top school. Even with a 710 you can get into a top school, especially US school. How many of you have heard people say that a GMAT's not end all? Right. And to a certain degree, that is true. The question that we had was, what impact does that 730 or 740 make? So last year, well, I shouldn't say last year, it's 2023 now. In 2021, in July, we actually reached out to about 500 of our students who were studying at top schools. And it wasn't just getting their scores, it was getting an entire data set where we said, okay, what's your background? Which schools did you apply to? Which schools did you get an admission from? Did you get a scholarship? And did you get an interview invite? And essentially, here's some interesting data point that we got. Okay, what we found was that a majority of the people who got into M7 schools, they had a score of 740 or higher. And a lot of our students are international students, so take that into account. Now, not everyone with a 740 got into an M7 school. The acceptance rate for those with a 740 was about 28%. The acceptance rate of those in the 710 to 730 bracket was at 13%. So there's you double the chances pretty much of getting into an M7 school if you have a 740 or higher, which I think is tremendous given the competition that you have and given the kind of resources the alumni that an M7 school provides you with. Okay. When it comes to scholarships, and this was something which is very interesting, and which is where you see the distinction between M7 and T20 schools. 45% of all 740 plus scorers who got into M7 schools got a scholarship. Okay, 82% of all students who got a 740 scorers, who got who got into T20 schools have gotten a scholarship. If you actually are connected to me on LinkedIn, you'll see for last year I'm going to start posting people who've gotten scholarships or so as well. T20 means top 20, top 25 schools. Something like a Keenan Flagler, for example, would come in there. Something like a essentially a Ross would come in there. So it's not an M7, but it's a really good school still, a top 20 school. Okay, M7 are Magnificent Seven. You have Harvard, you have Stanford, you have Booth. A whole list of seven schools that are out there. Columbia is there, uh, and so on and so forth. Okay. Um, it's slightly different from Ivy Leagues. For example, Brown is an Ivy League, but their corresponding MBA is not ranked over there. But yes, you can call it similar. Okay. There was another interesting question that we had, which was 740 to 760. What's the delta in scholarships? Okay, Columbia has an M7, yes. Okay, 740 to 760. What's the delta in scholarships? Okay, so one thing which was very hard to really do, because you needed to get enough people in that 740 bracket, enough people in that 760 bracket. Statistical significance meant, and with similar background. So we had to push really hard for it to get about 70 people in each bracket. And one thing that we found was that the median scholarship amount for people who had a 760 score was 63% higher than those who had a 740 score. That 740 to 760 delta was worth about $35,000 or so. And you can see the median scholarship amounts over here. And this was very, very interesting for us, because when you once you reach 740, you lose the wherewithal to get to a 760. So we needed to motivate people to get to that 760. And this research was done to really uh, get that piece out. And you wouldn't have seen this. Have you guys seen these data points anywhere? You wouldn't have, because no one else can produce these data points. Okay. Here are some anecdotal examples. So this is statistical data. Here's some anecdotal examples. Victor Makula got a 740, went to Wharton. He got full rides from Ross and Keenan Flagler. Okay. How did he get to a V44? I think he got a V44 and a Q49. Data was really important. He got, using the first two stages, he got to a V38, and then from that point on, he refined to get to a V44 or so. He got upwards of 300K in scholarships. Okay. Kong Bui, one of our other students, got a 760. Okay. So he got 5 full scholarships. The beauty of the scholarship that he got, and this guy studying is working at Amazon right now, is that he actually got money to study. So not only did he get a full ride, but he got a $1,700 a month stipend over there. And one of the things, if you watch his interview, when you get the PDF, you can watch his interview by clicking on this. That this guy doesn't speak perfect English. He did the basics right. He got a really good GMAT score. He prepared really well for the interview. He had the right answers there, and he was able to get there. Okay. Um, Akanksha, who got a 750, got into Wharton with 180K of total scholarships overall. This was something that we did last year, so this was May 25th to last year. But if you click on it, you'd be able to watch this, the recording of this on our YouTube channel. In fact, on our YouTube channel, you'd see journeys of 10 students who've gotten upwards of $10+ million in scholarship every year. EG Matters get about between 30 and $40 million in scholarship. We try and interview as many people as we can, so that you guys know what their journey was. Many of them actually negotiated their scholarship. How did they go about negotiating their scholarships? What was the correlation between their GMAT scores and scholarships? Some schools give scholarships purely based on your prior financial situation. How do you portray that, and so on and so forth? Okay. So you can go, if you've not subscribed to our YouTube channel, you can do that as well. Okay. Now, is this useful? I know this last data point was not about, or this last 10 minutes were not about your GMAT study plan, but are these stats useful? Yes, no, we don't care. Okay. JB has a question. It says, Since we understand everyone needs a personalized study plan and hours depending on the ability in each section, how many hours per day do we generally need or require? So one of the things about personalized study planner is you can put in the number of hours per day on weekdays and on weekends that you can put in. And in fact, you can go on a day by day basis and adjust that as well, and it'll adjust your study plan accordingly. So I recommend that at a bare minimum, you put in an hour a day and be very consistent. It's way better to put in an hour a day than to study just 3 days a week and put 2 hours per day. Um, and that's a bare minimum. For most working professionals, I recommend between 90 minutes to 2 hours during weekdays and between 4 to 5 hours during weekends. Okay. And you can take one day as a break day on the weekend. That's something if you truly want. A lot of working professionals study for 2 weeks, and on the 14th day of the week, they actually take a light day that allows them to have some fun. But you can take one day of the weekend and really just say, I'm going to study just the morning session, do 2 hours, and then have fun uh, 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 for the rest of the day, and that's absolutely okay. But during those 2 hours, don't to study anything new, revise whatever you've done. Okay. PSP is, that's truly free. Although I would just say this, that 80% of the people, once they build it, they want to join the course. I can tell you that. How long does it take to go from that 540 to a 710? PSP will tell you about 180 to 220 hours or so. So again, depends on your diligence level. Okay. And it's because of this personalization, that has helped us. If you go to a YouTube channel, you'll see a video how personalization has helped us go from, accounting for 20% of all 700 plus scores to 60% since 2021. So a lot of these innovations came between 2019 and 2021, and then 2021, since 2021. Um, we've been accounting for 60% of or 3 out of 5 700 plus scores reported on GMAT Club. And just to really tell you what this means is, if you go look at the review section on GMAT Club, and GMAT Club's really nice about organizing all of these scores in a chronological order. You'll see the dates of for each review on the right hand side. You really see that we account for 60%. Everyone else over here accounts for 40% or so. Okay. A lot of people know us for our verbal prowess. What you don't realize, and this is something you can see as well, that we also account for about 70% of all Q49 plus scores that have been reported since middle of 2021, which is when we launched our Quant 2.0 course, which was a completely revamped course or so. Okay. A lot of people talk about 5-star reviews, and we also have most 5-star reviews. In fact, this data is from November. Right now, this number is closer to 1,900 5-star reviews or so. Okay. All right. So with that, let's go to the last piece over here, and which is how do you build ability. Abraham says, do you help with study pack for practice? Absolutely. Again, when you go read the reviews, you will really see what all do we help with as well. 44 days to go from 260 to 730, a bit hard. I'll be very frank. It's a bit hard. You'd need a bit more time. Okay. All right, let's get into how do we build ability or so. So what have we learned so far? Okay. What we've learned so far is that you need that high score, and that you get that score only if you build ability. That's 80% of everything. Your PSP tells you where you need to focus on it. It charts a path for you, and it gives you the most efficient path or so. And then you have these stages of learning. Depending on your starting ability, you need to start at that appropriate stage of learning. Okay. All right. I'm going to talk about why is it that people don't improve even when they get a study plan. And I'll tell you, not everyone who takes an e-GMAT course improves. Okay. And which is why you don't see a claim which says a median reported score for e-GMAT is essentially 730 or so. Because essentially we know a lot of that success depends also on your diligence. Just buying a course doesn't help you get there. We, on the other hand, talk about our share of success that we report or so. Okay. Now, why is it that people remain stuck at that 60th percentile? And again, guys, right hand side, please don't put your questions. Put your questions in the Q&A pod. That way, Vaibhav can get to your questions and he can respond to those questions here. So I'm going to clear the right hand side pod in 3 seconds. You can copy and paste your questions in the Q&A pod. That way, Weber will have the luxury to respond to those. Okay, 3, 2, and 1. All right. So I'm going to compare two individuals, one who's at 60th percentile, the other one who gets to that 90th percentile. I'm going to talk about the context of just SC, and just to really compare this. When you think about 60th percentile, there are about 200,000 people or 2 lakh people who take the GMAT every year. Um, 60th percentile means there are 80,000 people who are at the same level or better than you. 90th percentile means there are about 20k people who are at the same level or better than you. Both the 60th and the 90th percentile student spend about 40 hours preparing for the GMAT. They have similar starting ability and the capability. A lot of people kind of mistake this. Their capability to ace the test is similar. A lot of people think, hey, this guy is smart. This I'm not as smart, so I can't get there. No, the GMAT's a very learnable test, and most people have the capability to ace it. Okay, they are just not diligent enough. They may not have the wherewithal, but they have the capability. The gray cells exist. You may not have the mental toughness to do this. Okay, now remember this, achieving that 90th percentile is about achieving that perfection. Remember that we said 65% accuracy on hard questions, 80% accuracy on medium hard, 90% accuracy on medium questions. You want to make sure that you do that. Okay, now the way a 60th percentile student approaches the test is very different from how a 90th percentile student approaches the test. Okay, a 60th percentile student says, "Hey, GMAT SC is about mastering the rules of these major error types that are listed over here." A 60th percentile student, the moment they look at an SC question, they start really looking for splits, really say, what is the difference between answer choices? And then if they can't find a difference, they say, okay, let me just think about meaning. For them, meaning is an error type. That 68th percentile student, remember, spends that 40 hours, but really just goes through all the theory. Most likely they read a Manhattan GMAT book or they go through any other course. They spend about 30% of their time going through that course, so about 12 to 15 hours going through that course, and then the remaining 70% of their time is spent on practicing official guide questions. A 68th percentile student, anyone who can see themselves or who has seen themselves go through this path. Does this sound familiar? Yes, just one yes, a few more yeses. I'm sure many people do this. This is what a 61st percentile student does. And the nice thing about this entire process is, as you're learning that theory, it seems you're learning things, it seems you're improving, and you do improve, which is where you go from that 40th to that 60th percentile. But that improvement stops at that 60th percentile. A 90th percentile student looks at GMAT sentence correction in very, very different ways. Okay, a 90th percentile student says, hey, to understand that to ace GMAT RC, you have to master sentence structures, and there are about 200 odd sentence structures that the GMAT tests, and those sentence structures in them test these errors, but their goal is to master both these errors as well as these sentence structures. For them, their focus is primarily on solving questions using meaning. Okay, for them, meaning is not an error type. They don't use splits, they use meaning. Yes, they eliminate wrong answers, but on very solid grounds, not on rules, or not just on rules. For them, the number of feedback points when they're learning, that number is about 10 times as much at least. Why? Because if you have to learn these 200 sentence structures, you need this kind of feedback over there. And they spend the same 40 hours, but they spend 25 to 30 hours learning, and then the remaining hours going through the cementing stage and 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 refining to perfection. Now remember this, even when they're learning, they are practicing questions, they are going through examples, but that's very, very targeted practice. Okay, SV is subject verb. Okay. The GMAT Rama is not a test of English. The GMAT's a test of logic. GMAT Verbal is a test of logic, as is GMAT Quant. So that's the good news for you. If you're logical, I've seen people from Hindi medium, Gujarati medium, people get 90th percentile as long as they have a logical approach to this. Okay. The question you have to ask is, if there are these 200 sentence structures, then how can you see you've achieved perfection or achieved a good level of ability if you just get 7 to 10 feedback points? It's just not possible. Yes, some people succeed, people who are really good, who are really diligent test takers, but most people need way more feedback while learning. Now, what are these sentence structures? How do they play role in errors? I want to tell you this using I want to demonstrate this using an SC question. Now, remember, my goal is not to teach you SC. We have an entire SC webinar uh, 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 in about 2 weeks. My goal is to make sure that you can see the role that sentence structures play. So I'm going to give you a question. Let me put in your answer, the poll over here. I want to give you 2 minutes to answer this question. So you'll have ample time to answer these questions, this question. And because I don't want to kind of time you, I want you to select this choice that says still solving. I want about 40 people to select still solving, and that way, when 80% of you choose an option other than still solving, I will call time. Okay, 40 people to say still solving before I show the question, please. I have 22 people who've said still solving. I need a few more folks, please. While you guys are doing that, Harsh says forming sentence structure takes a lot of time in a timed environment. Do we really have to form sentence structure for all SC questions while giving the test? Harsh, really good question. I think one of the questions that I asked early on and is that should you be worried about timing while learning? The answer is no. Um, now would you formally need the core thing over here is in the process of learning, make sure you deliberately create that sentence structure. As you do this, your brain will train itself to build that sentence structure implicitly. Think about driving. I mean, when you started to learn how to drive, you had to focus on 10 different things. Now you do it subconsciously. So you want to achieve a similar level of proficiency, and the only way you will do this is by doing it consciously first. Okay, so don't worry about timing. Build accuracy. Timing will fall in place. All right. So with that, I'm going to move broadcast results. Here is the sentence, guys. Good luck. All right, guys. Pretty much everyone's done. About 80% of you who are done here, get those answers in. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. I'm going to end the poll. I'm going to broadcast the results. I want to thank everyone for participating. This was really good. overall. Like about 80% of the class participated, put in an answer. That's good. That's really brave. You can see this is how you guys polled. Choice C was really popular. Choice D was popular as well, as was choice E. Choices A and B were not popular. We're going to solve this question. We're going to look at the detail. Again, my goal is not to teach you SC. Most of you should get it. Some of you will not get it because you don't have the foundation. And if you don't get it, don't worry about it. Uh, uh, it's not a judgment on your ability to absorb sentence correction. Also, don't judge me because again, my goal is not to teach you SC. Just to be very clear. But how did you feel about this question when you were solving this? How did you feel? Good. Too lengthy. Okay. It gave you enough time. So what? It's lengthy. Confident. Great. Time taking. Okay. Meaning was very important to solve. Yes, it is. In every SC question, meaning is important. Difficulty in reading and getting. That's good. So one of the things which I tell people when you attend a subject matter webinar is your goal. A lot of people attend webinars with the goal to solve every question correctly, and that's an okay goal. But one of the biggest goals that you should have with regards to attending any learning webinar is to make sure that you learn, to figure out what's wrong with my approach, what do I need to fix, and how am I going to answer that question, how will I fix it. Even if you answer every question incorrectly, as long as you learn why you got it wrong, that's good. That's you benefited from that webinar. Okay. So have that attitude and you're going to find improvement happens a lot easily. So the first thing you have to really see is, do we see splits in this question? And there aren't. It's not very easy to do using splits. First of all, it's a completely underlined question. um, so you have the things the church coined in terms of starting. You have while the church coined, while with an ulterior motive. You have while a few experts claim. So you have multiple beginnings. You have contrast words, but in four answer choices, but not in choice C. Um, and you have a bunch of sentence structures over here. So when you look at the overall combinations, splits starts to be difficult in questions such as this. Okay. So clearly you can't use splits, and while it works in medium easy questions, when it comes to medium hard and hard, you're going to find it becomes increasingly difficult to use splits. Okay. Now, what's the meaning-based method? One of the cornerstones of meaning-based method is to really understand what is it that the author intends to communicate from the sentence. What's the job that the sentence has to do? Remember, every piece of writing has a job to deliver, and you have to understand what aspects of meaning does the author want to communicate. And to do that, you have to follow a technique, what we call a strategically pausing. And we do that, we teach you that technique in master comprehension. And you have to really say, okay, what is it the mean what's the meaning that the author wants to communicate. And when you do that, this is where you do the sentence structure. And one thing that you notice is that there are three aspects that the author wants to communicate through the sentence. First of all, there are two claims that the author wants to communicate about the celebration of why February 14th is celebrated as Valentine's Day. The first claim is by the church, and then where the author communicates that the church designated it with a certain motive, and that motive was ulterior. Okay. The claim two is essentially a second motive, which is to honor the anniversary of Saint Valentine's death or burial. Now, these two claims are by two different entities. Claim one is by a few experts. Claim two is, in general, the most prevalent belief. Now, I want you to tell me, when you were analyzing uh, the aspects of meaning, and this is a multiple response question, which aspect did you not identify? If you're able to identify all three, don't mark anything. But if you missed on something, you should mark that. And you can say one and two, two and three, one, two, and three. While you were solving the question, which aspect did you not identify? And that's really important to really put in. Why? Because this is the step where you may have faltered because of this. This is the cause that may lead to the effect that you would have answered the question incorrectly. And you can really see a lot of people did not focus on the third aspect, which is that these claims are by two different set of experts. Some of you did not focus on the very fact that there are two specific reasons. There are two reasons why February 14th is called a Valentine's Day, and very few of you kind of did not get the first thing, first aspect of meaning. Really important to do this. Why? Because if you identify where you're faltering, Fixing that is fairly easy. As I said, the GMAT's not rocket science. You have to have a proper specific process to do this. Okay, we already did this piece over here. If you got all three, then congratulate yourself. Meaning is not the reason why you got this wrong, or it could be the reason, but essentially you may have gotten all three aspects. But if you did not take these aspects while evaluating the answer choice, then that's a process issue. But meaning is not the reason why got it wrong. But if you missed either one of these aspects, whether it's one, two, or three, then you need to focus on your ability to extract meaning. And how you do that? It's by strategically pausing. Okay. Now let's kind of look at we understand the meaning. Let's analyze the original answer, the errors in the original answer choice. And one of the things that you would really see is that you have these verbs is, claimed, and is. They don't have associated subjects. You have subject verb pair here. You have a subject verb pair here. But these two verbs do not have associated subjects. Missing subjects means you have because of the missing subject error. Choice A is incorrect. How many of you identified the missing subject error as a definitive error in choice A and really rejected it? Let me just put in a yes no poll here. Let me clear all answers. How many of you did that when you were solving the question? Really important. If you didn't do that, understand why that's the case and understand the value of that sentence structure that comes in here. Okay. If you still rejected it without knowing this, don't congratulate yourself, learn from it, because in a different question, you may not be able to do this. Okay. Let's kind of take the meaning and error analysis over here. We have choice B. This is your choice A. These are your three aspects over here. And this is your choice B. Choice B says, while with an ulterior motive to Christianize the pagan celebration of Lupercalia, a few experts do claim. Now, in the original choice, the ulterior motive was with the church. In this choice, the ulterior motive is with a few experts. Because this changes the meaning, this answer choice is wrong. We reject this. I'm going to share, the choices that you chose once again, so that you guys have that in your memory. This is how you guys polled, just to be very clear, so you can recall the choice that you chose. Okay, so because of this, choice B is wrong. Let's look at choice C. Choice C says, while a few experts claim, choice C is beautiful when it comes to sentence structure. It reads really well. But there's a problem with this. Choice C says, while a few experts claim that the church coined the date February 14th as Valentine's Day, blah, 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 their more prevalent belief is, okay, who does this pronoun there refer to? It refers to this same set of experts over here. Okay, is that what the author intended to communicate over here in the original answer choice? Let me hide this. I want you to type it out. Is that what the author intended to communicate? No. Reads elegantly, no grammatical error, meaning error is an issue. Okay, because of which choice C is wrong. Okay, people who chose choice C, half the class chose choice C. Can you see why this is wrong? Can you see why meaning is important when it comes to GMAT sentence correction? People who chose choice C. Okay, perfect. All right. Let's talk about choice D. Choice D is a difficult one to reject. Choice D was also an incorrect choice. We're going to really see why that's the incorrect choice. And this is a concept that's tested very frequently in GMAT RC, but sometimes in hard questions it's tested on GMAT SC as well. The church coined the date February 14 as Valentine's Day with an ulterior motive to Christianize, as claimed by experts. But its celebration on this day is to honor the anniversary of Valentine's Day, the more prevalent belief. So to explain this part, I'm going to really take an example. Apple is the market leader, as claimed by Forbes magazine. Now, in this, when you're doing this, I want you to tell me, are you communicating information and are you making the claim? What is the answer to these two questions? Yeah. Are you making a claim here? Yes. Are you communicating information here? So first is your first yes no should be, are you communicating information, and the next should be this, next one should be, are you making a claim? The answer is yes, you're communicating information, and no, you're not making a claim. Okay. Does it mean should you be blamed if it turns out that Apple is not a market leader? The answer is no. Okay. So yes, no, and no. Does everyone understand this? And you say that Apple is the market leader is claimed by Forbes magazine, and you need that over here because you need that subject. Um, you're communicating information. Prior to this, the reader had no idea that Forbes magazine made a claim. But are you really saying that according to you, Apple is the market leader? No, absolutely not. So if it turns out that Apple is not the market leader, do you hold a blame? Absolutely not. Okay, it's not your recommendation. You don't back it. You're merely telling someone that, hey, Forbes magazine said something. You should know. By the way, make your own judgment beyond that. Okay. Now let's talk about this. Apple is the market leader as claimed by Forbes magazine. When you here we replace this is by as. Here, what you're doing, yes, you consider magazine's quote. The claim was made by the magazine over here. The claim was made by the magazine. This is no different than you making a statement. Let me just put in another notepad over here. P and Q, Poet and Quan said that when you see this statement, are you making a claim here? No. Are you making a claim here? Absolutely not. Right? All you're saying is communicating information. I think P and Q said something. Okay. Who made the claim? Poets and quants. Okay. When you have a slightly different sentence structure, then you start to back that claim, and with as. Okay, Apple is the market leader as claimed by Forbes magazine. You say, hey, Forbes magazine claimed that Apple is the market leader, and I back it. So in this case, all the yeses are ticks. Okay, so when you use the is versus as, and this is where the sentence structure comes in, the claim was still made by Forbes magazine, but you're backing it. All right. And that's something which is really important as a distinction, and this is something that's tested on GMAT RC left and right, especially in inference questions. So in choice D, in both the claims, the author is backing that claim. When you say as claimed by a few experts, the author is backing that claim, and when the author says comma, the more prevalent belief, the author is backing that claim as well. Okay, again, not something that the original choice intended to agree with, and not something that would be the part of the correct answer choice. Okay, is there anything grammatically wrong with this? Not really, but again, doesn't serve the intended meaning. Choice E, which is our correct choice, says that the church coined the date February 14, blah blah blah, is claimed by a few experts, but the more prevalent belief is it is celebrated on this day to honor the anniversary of Valentine's death or burial. Perfect sentence, absolutely correct. All aspects of the meaning are communicated properly, and there's nothing wrong with this. Okay, why do people reject choice E? First of all, they say, hey, this sentence is started by that, and Anish says this, that was verbose under GMAT standards. Okay, how many of you looked at this and said, hey, this is why I'm going to reject it? Sentence starts with that, it's very weird. Why? How many of you think GMAT SC is a test of grammar? How many of you think GMAT sentence correction is a test of grammar? It isn't. Do you think Satya Nadella, Sundar Pichai are perfect grammarians? Do you think Larry Bossidy or Larry Page would do better than your grammar teacher? No, the answer is no. What they are effective communicators. And that's what's important. When they want to communicate something, they focus on making sure that the subjects and verbs, the modifiers refer to the right things. Okay. A lot of other people really just say, hey, this passive voice here is claimed by a few experts over here. And people really reject this because they say passive voice is wrong on the GMAT. How many of you think that passive voice is wrong on the GMAT? Or being is wrong on the GMAT? No, it isn't. It's a perfectly acceptable construct of English language. And if that's what the author intended, passive voice is absolutely correct. Okay. Okay. A lot of people also think that there needs to be a that here. It always has to be there when okay. Again, that's a misconception. You guys, and when you think about GMAT grammar, there are some very deterministic rules. A lot of those rules focus on meaning. Remember this. What's the job of grammar? Why does grammar even exist in the English language? Have you guys ever questioned that? Have you ever questioned why does grammar exist? So that we can communicate effective the meaning effectively. Why do we have subject verb agreement? This sentence is wrong, right? Sentence is wrong. Why? Because the subject verb doesn't agree. Now, what is the correct sentence in this case? What do you think is the correct sentence? Okay. Some of you say they are playing. What about he is playing? Why can't he is playing be the correct sentence? Let's just make sure, right? It could be either one. So when you have subject verb agreement, you are very certain whether it's, they are playing or whether he is playing. There's double confirmation there. That's why the rule exists, so that you can express meaning properly. Rules don't exist. Grammar rules, especially in the context of modern usage, not in the context of grammarians, but in the context of modern usage, which is what the GMAT is. It's there to express meaning. It's there to express clear meaning, not because we want to follow grammar. No. Okay. No, it's not. But the relevant prevalent belief is it is. Okay. Again, you can write to me if you have doubts about it. We'll give you more sentence structures. But this is the kind of clarity you need to build on this. Ritan says, I eliminated E because I did not find possessive pronoun referring to possessive noun and selected D. Again, look at the terms. Why does an MBA need to really worry about that again? Someone who has to make business decisions? Can you answer that question? Is the meaning clear? Is there any ambiguity here? The ambiguity question that was there was a good question, but when you talk about possessive noun, possessive pronoun, does an MBA need to know that? No. Why? He needs to be an effective communicator. He or she, both. And this is something where I'm telling you guys, as someone who actually, as a company that delivers 60% of all 700 plus scores, don't worry about archaic grammar rules. Focus on deterministic grammar rules. Really important. And if you can't um, attribute a grammar rule to meaning, there's something wrong with it. In the context of GMAT, I will only talk about in the context of GMAT because that's all I care about. Okay. Again, in all of these sentences, grammar is not an issue. It's the meaning distortion that's there. Okay. One of the other things, again, my goal wasn't to teach you grammar here or even SC, but my goal was to really see just in a single sentence, could you see various sentence structures? Could you see how they refer to various aspects of it? Could you see the sentence structures there and how they link to each other? That's where when I say it's about 200 sentence structures. And just in a single sentence, there were about 10 sentence structures there. Okay. Anish has another question. Does it mean I'm free to choose what feels or sounds right? Absolutely not. It doesn't mean that. It means you have to choose what communicates the intended meaning. Okay. Ritan says, I read in a book, that's why my first choice was C, which was the possessive piece over there. Again, do you understand the reason behind that noun? As I said, when it comes to GMAT sentence correction or GMAT critical reasoning, you're not going to be judged on whether you know a certain rule or not. What you're going to be judged on is, can you communicate effectively? Can you apply that rule? Do you understand why that exists in the first place? Okay, that's very important. And this is where each one of you needs feedback at every stage. When I talked about, learning concepts and application, you need feedback. And that's kind of where most people who are below 60th percentile need the most feedback, because that's where um, people who are in that below that 650 bracket need the most help. Okay. And this is where we provide that feedback here. If you go to our website, you see this point which says 500 points of personalized feedback. You can click on watching this and watch this video. This is a video over here. It'll tell you how we provide that feedback overall. Okay. But essentially, when you to achieve that 90th percentile, you need to achieve that perfection in all areas. If you want to achieve 90% accuracy in medium difficulty questions, you need that perfection. If you want to achieve similar accuracy in hard questions, you need that perfection. Okay. And to really see how this is different, I invite you to attend a subject matter session that we have. um, so we have the algebra session tomorrow, which you can really see. But we also have the RC webinar next week, in which you'll see how our approach to RC is different, how and why even folks who are non-voracious readers, when they use our reading strategies, they're able to GMAT RC. Okay, so you can click on this and register for these webinars. Again, if you have doubts about this SC question, you can write to me at rajat@e-gmat.com, and be happy to answer those questions. Okay. I'm going to share this with you later on if you need. But again, just in the context of SC course, you get upwards of 150 feedback points. Again, depending on if you're at that lowest ability level, you get up to 150 feedback points. Each of these points is personalized to you. Okay. And which is why we deliver this. People who hit the metrics, who respond to these feedback points, who do revision based on these feedback points, they are the ones who achieve those 700 plus scores, and which is what has led to this success overall. Where do these stats come from? They come from GMAT Club review. So if you go over here, and the reason why GMAT Club reviews are the right way to do this is because you cannot post a review unless you provide a live score report. So you've got to provide a live score report link. They won't even accept a PDF, but that link should be live from mba.com if you have to post a review, and you can really see that. Okay. All right. With that, I've come to the end of this webinar. Just to summarize, you need that 730 plus score if you're aiming for that B school, and if you want to earn a scholarship, especially in today's day and age where US dollar the exchange rate is the highest it has ever been. Okay. The second piece is, when it comes to acing the GMAT, you've got to build ability. Focus on building ability. Don't worry about timing. Don't worry about which questions you're going to answer. Don't worry about taking mocks if you are more than 50 points away from your target GMAT score. Focus on hitting the metrics. Okay. Have that personalized study plan. If you don't have it yet, make sure you reserve and book a call. And make sure you start your learning from the right stage of you start your preparation from the right stage of learning. Really important here. Okay. And then use the feedback overall. Okay. With that, I'm going to just hide this poll over here. For those of you who wanted Sigma X mock, here is the link to Sigma X mock as well. You can see the link to algebra webinar tomorrow. I'm also going to give you the session PDF, and at this point, I'll be happy to answer any question that you have. Let me just bring in the session PDF over here. Here's the session PDF. Strategic review, yes, as Anish, is a feature of an e-GMAT platform. It's what we call the behavioral error log that we pioneered about a year back. Yes. Okay. So feedback on the webinar, guys. In the short answer part on the extreme right hand side, if you could provide feedback on the webinar, if you can tell me what were your key takeaways, that would be great. Over here, so I can type feedback here. So that's something that you can provide. Debajyoti says, how do we decide which aspects of grammar to study and which ones are not needed? Again, your e-GMAT SC course decides that, tells you that, and it evaluates you on that. It gives you feedback on that as well, based on your performance. Every learning activity in the course is evaluated overall. How do we communicate from inside the students portal? If you have a doubt, every activity has its own internal forum. So if you have a subject matter doubt, you ask those doubts over here, and an SME will respond to it in less than 24 hours. Anyone over here who has posted a doubt on our internal forum, who's a student who's posted a doubt? Okay. Yes. If you have a strategy doubt, then essentially you write to me or write to our support team, and they'll respond to you. So okay. Um, any exclusive offer to those who to purchase e-GMAT? We, again, our goal is to build give you the best chance to succeed. There's no, we don't really. I mean, we give you New Year offers and Christmas offers, but we don't really offer discounts left and right. I mean, we would rather spend that time investing in content and technology. By the way, just offside, we just did the math. Till 2022, over the last decade, we've invested upwards of $10 million in building our technology platform. Okay, so that's, when you look at it, you're not looking at someone who's you're not going through a course where we've rented a technology platform. We've truly invested and optimized that platform to make sure you succeed. Would any quant and verbal coach be assigned for help? Kaustubh, again, if you have doubts, so this is a self-paced learning platform. Let me be very clear, guys. And this is where we build a lot of content, we build a lot of technology, and we refine on that content. I mean, we are a 43% company. We do just the GMAT. We don't do the GRE. We don't do the SAT. We have a support team that has a CSAT score of 4.5, which, by the way, is way better than what Apple and Samsung offer, or any other test prep company in the world offers, by the way. Okay. If you need help, you write to us and we will help you. But this is not private tutoring. Let me just be very clear. But I can tell you that if you're putting in the effort, you will not find that there's anything missing in support, or you're not getting the support. You would find support way better than anywhere else, or anything that you've experienced, by the way. And talk to people who've taken the e-GMAT course. They will tell you. Okay. The kind of support. In fact, our strategy team, they create personalized videos giving you support. So we use a lot of Loom videos to give support. You actually see who that strategy expert is. When you buy the course, every week we have multiple onboarding sessions where you work with the strategy expert, and they onboard you, they tell you the best practices, they tell you how should you approach the course or so. Anish has a great question. Why is it that I included the study buddy piece in the initial part of the webinar? So great question. So why did we have that question over there? Now, remember this. A lot of people think, I and my friend, we have same starting scores. We can follow the same study plan. That doesn't work. Each one of you has different strengths, different weaknesses. So you need that personalized study plan. And hence the piece over there, which says, hey, can I take a study plan that both me and my friend and I can follow? The answer is no, you should not. That's counterproductive. Okay. Does Sigma mock provide personalized study plan? The mock by itself does not. You take a mock, and then if you're an e-GMAT student, you have unlimited use of that personalized study planner tool. If not, you can book a call if there are any slots available still on the extreme right hand corner, and work with an expert to build a study plan one time. Okay. Should you attend an RC webinar? Great question. I'm going to provide the piece over here. Let me give the link to register for the RC webinar. So, should you attend the RC webinar if you're still studying SC? No, don't. No, I mean, don't break your flow. Don't attend the RC webinar if you're studying the SC course. Okay. Do you get the personalized study plan without the mock? Shubhi says, Shubhi, if you have an ESR, we can use that data. If you don't have an ESR, if you've taken another mock, we can infer some insights. It won't be as precise. I mean, the whole part of personalized study plan depends on your starting abilities, and so that's where you need those starting abilities. So there are two ways you can get those. One is through an ESR, the second is through a Sigma X mock. Otherwise we have to estimate those abilities, and that's where that's something that we can't do. Rupesh says, I'm a working professional. I can give a maximum of 1 hour per day on weekday and up to 4 hours. Is it sufficient for a 2 month access only, Rupesh? The answer depends on what your starting ability is. Remember, it's acing the GMAT is not about completing the course. Most people don't even need to finish all aspects of the course. Um, so I don't know what your starting ability is, so I can't really say if it's enough. The thing which is there is, if you need time beyond that, you can always extend. We have monthly extension option that's $79. So you can always extend. Okay. Session PDF is there. Web, there are certain questions that are there for you as well, if you can take those. Let me just go through the questions here. Ritin says, I've gone through the course once. uh, RC, I'm still using the same passage. It kind of, so Ritin, what you're really saying is you use the same because you want to go through the course again. You use the passages are the same. That's why you have a challenge. So I think one thing which is there is, first of all, write to the support team. They will give an assessment of where you lack. They can look at the stats. I can't look at the stats right now and give you that assessment, but they can. They will give you a path forward, and as you and they'll tell you, okay, what is it, what ability do you need to build, and they can even provide some additional resources to you. Okay, so definitely write to them, because I don't want you to go through the course just again blindly. It's wastage of time. It's not something that will yield the results if that's not where your issues are. If truly that's where your issues are, the support team will tell you. But before you go on and spend 20 hours, I would rather have the support team take a look at your account, tell you what you missed the first time, if you've truly missed something, and then what should you be doing. Does that make sense, Ritin? Okay, perfect. Anish says, I'm taking the exam on 13th of April. Can I start now without the risk of using momentum? Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yes. I mean, that's enough time. I mean, it's 7th of January right now. It's more than enough time for most people. Okay. Um, Session PDF, top left hand corner. That's where it is. So 660 to 730. Can you do it in 2 months? Absolutely. 2 months is, as I said, 60 to 730. You're looking at about 80, 90 hours of investment. 2 months is the right plan for you. Similarly, there's a related question about, if I just need verbal, what do I do? Again, if you just need verbal, buy the 2 month plan. We used to have a verbal plan for $249 that was for 4 months. It had two issues over there. One is that it was more expensive for people, and second is most people didn't need a 4 months. So essentially, we said, you have an all you can eat plan that way. If you need verbal help, and if you need some slight quant help, in quant we have the pace engine where it'll tell you what do you need to do. it actually builds a personalized course for you depending on a set of diagnostics that it throws at you. So a lot of people found that to be much more beneficial. That's one of the driving factors into that number of 700 plus scores, because people weren't just using us for verbal, they were using us for quant as well. Okay. Is Do we still have the focus plan for 199? Yes, if you go on the website, you click on buy now, you can get that for 199. Okay. All right. um I think that's about it, guys. Again, thank you so much for the feedback overall. um Gaurav has another question that just popped in, which is, I had completed the SV module, but the meaning method is still not something. So you say, I completed the SC module, you don't need past perfect, uh, because you're not doing two relative events. But the meaning method is still not something that I'm able to use. Once I see the solution, everything seems fine, but understanding the same thing on my own seems difficult. Please let me know what should be my next steps. Really good question. I'm really glad you asked this question. So again, I'm going to do an approximate diagnosis here, because remember, in the subject verb module, I have 10 data points. Each activity has a data point. It tells me what you've understood and what you've not. But just based on this, what you're telling me is, one input that I will tell you is, go slow. Okay. Don't rush through things. The second thing is, when you're going through the concepts, make sure you ask yourself. So when each concept file has about 12 examples, try and tweak those examples and create three more right then and there. Build that higher level of understanding. One of the reasons why we don't give you a day by day study plan is because when we tell people you have to go through these four activities in a day, people rush through them mechanically rather than focusing on truly understanding them. So Gaurav, uh, uh, when you read the solution and you say, oh, I understand it, the question that you have to answer is, why did you not get it when you were solving it yourself? Which aspect of that understanding was missing? Ask yourself that question. When you do that differential analysis, that's when you reach that higher level of understanding. And you're just in the first module of the 8 modules in SC course. It's the smallest module in SC. And when you do write down what you were missing and you practice that in the pronouns module, which is the next module, that's when you will get better. And when you not just write it down, actually write to us saying that, hey, this is my analysis, this is what I was missing, and this is what I'm going to do. Am I doing the right thing? You can write to us, you can record a Loom video and send it to us, or a screencast-o-matic video, and we'll respond to you. Does that make sense, Gaurav? Shubhi says, could you recommend good sources for mocks if one has finished the official mocks and Manhattan mocks alongside GMAT Club practice? Mocks will not help you if that's what you've already done. The question is, why are you still taking mocks, Shubhi? If you've okay, so I mean, what metrics are you tracking is the first piece. I mean, when I see people taking these mocks, what the mindset that they have, and should be correct me uh, if I'm wrong. The mindset that they have is that, hey, I'm gonna take mocks, and mocks, and I'm gonna get better with every mock, and magically that target score will be there. Okay, that doesn't happen that way. It doesn't happen. That's not the process of building ability. I improved to 730 plus in official mocks, but did not do well on the exam day. Okay, that's good. Now you have to answer two questions there then. One is, did you mess up on the exam because because you tried to do something special, or were the mock scores on official mocks not representative? And why would they not be representative? Because, I mean, how many of you practice on GMAT Club? How many of you practice on GMAT Club? And practice official questions on GMAT Club? Yes, no poll there. If you're practicing official questions on GMAT Club, a lot of times you would see questions that are from the official GMAT mocks that are there, and you take them, and then the official mocks are not representative. On the other hand, if your official mocks were truly representative of your ability, then you probably just had a bad day. Okay. Again, if I were you, contact our support team, take a few cementing quizzes, and then really see, is your ability truly there? So I think the first question you need to answer is, where is your ability? And so did you mess up because you didn't do well on the test and it was that one day and you put yourself under undue pressure, or whether you truly don't have ability? Answer that question, you'll have a lot more clarity. If you truly have the ability, then you do well on our cementing quizzes, and then we'll say this is what you need to do. If you don't have the ability, then we'll tell you this is where you are. Should you practice LSAT passages? No, please don't practice LSAT passages. Okay, please don't. They are, I mean, there's a reason why there's LSAT and there's GMAT. What lawyers do is very different from what MBAs do. Okay. uh, so attend the webinar next week. You will get to know what GMAT RC is about. And again, take a look at our free trial, take a look at the RC main point questions, take a look at critical reasoning question and sentence correction concepts over there. You will really truly understand um, how to visualize information, and how to build the core skills of comprehension. Or in quant, you would truly understand how to infer information from numbers, how to summarize uh, what's given to you, so you truly understand the process skills that are there in quant, and then once you do that, you'll see improvement happens a lot faster. Okay. Do you have to purchase the official guides along with the e-GMAT course? No, we don't provide you the official questions. We do, the GMAC would not license questions to anyone. So you would need to produce to have one official guide. That's something that we recommend, just one, don't need more than that. And I can tell you, most people who buy the OG only focus on medium, hard, and hard questions. Once they go through the GMAT course, they don't do the easy and medium questions. There's no need to do it. In fact, no need to do even the medium and medium hard. It's just to medium, hard, and hard. It's just because they want to have that confidence. That's why they do it. Again, read the reviews, you will see that. Does the ESR come with a Sigmax mock? Yes, you finish the mock, and you see the ESR like output. It's better than ESR, by the way. We call it ESR plus output right then and there. Let me. So here you can watch this video to talk about to see what kind of insights do we provide. Okay. All right, guys. With that, I want to thank everyone for joining me today. It was a pleasure having you guys here. It was, as I said, it was the first webinar of 2023. I was fortunate enough to host it, and I want to thank you for spending your time, your Friday, your Saturday mornings, afternoons, or evenings with me, depending on the time zone that you are in. And I look forward to seeing you on e-GMAT. Thank you, and have a great day.